Good evening, everyone. It is, we're a little minute late. I'm sorry about that. It is 6:01, and it is June 15th. This is the school committee meeting of June 15th, and we're going to start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, a quick check for everyone in the audience to see if we have anyone recording this evening's meeting. Is there anyone other than the town? The town is broadcasting the meeting. Anyone else recording tonight's meeting? Seeing none, thank you very much. That brings us to our public comment section of the meeting, and tonight we have the opportunity, as we do all nights, for folks to address the board. And forgive me while I very quickly pull up my notes so I get all of this right. There we go. So our public meeting comment, our public comment portion of the meeting is taking place now. Each attendee is welcome to speak up to 3 minutes at a time. Each attendee is welcome to speak up to 2 times. All comments will be addressed through the chair, not through other individuals. All comments must be related to a topic within the school committee's jurisdiction. As a reminder, the school committee's jurisdiction does cover the hiring, evaluation, and supervision of the superintendent, as well as the establishment of the district budget, establishment of district goals, and policies. The First Amendment does allow broad constitutional speech protections. However, it has been ruled that free speech does not allow any type of threats, fighting words, or obscene content. Written comments, especially those that are longer than 3 minutes, may be submitted to the chair. They may be submitted tonight or after tonight, and if they are submitted tonight or after tonight, they will be shared with all members of the committee. The public comment period is a comment period. It is not a discussion. Members of the board and representatives of the schools are asked to listen and not respond to information during the public comment. It is possible that questions asked or topics raised during the public comment tonight will be addressed during tonight's school committee meeting or potentially after the school committee meeting. And I will note that our school committee meeting does ask for a good level of respect for not only those on the board, but also those on the audience and those listening. So certainly if we can keep our meeting in good order, that will be in everyone's best interest, and I do appreciate that. And so we'll start with anyone that would like to address the board, starting with the gentleman. Sir, if you could just, I should have said this, if you could just state your name so everyone knows.
Yes, sir. Adam LeBlanc. Afternoon, evening. Just want to go on record real quick to notify the board and everybody else who's watching at home. Murdoch currently has 4 students, athletes, that are currently at the Nike Invitational in Eugene, Oregon. 2 of those students, Madison and Sean Vizina, Madison Bradley and Sean Vizina, are currently jumping right now, and our 3rd athlete will be running tomorrow, with our last one jumping on Sunday. That would be Murphy and LeBlanc. With that being said, those students are representing the school very well with their drive and dedication to their sport. Doing some some detailed search on our Winchendon Public Schools district curriculum accommodation plan. Sitting in on plenty of these meetings, obviously being no stranger to any one of you on the board. The vision and statement of the Winchendon Public Schools actualizes the promise of education, with collective responsibilities to provide the students with the opportunity for social, emotional, and academic success, ensuring each graduate is equipped with skills, knowledge, and habits to preserve and realize their unique potential. Let that sink in for a sec. We believe that every individual can achieve at high levels. This belief is reflected in the highest expectations we set for students and ourselves, both in schools and in the community. I would put on my opinion that we are failing not only in the schools, but in the community. We share common visions of effective instruction, driven by data, educators working together, and challenging and engaging all students in every class every day. Again, in my opinion, I believe we are failing as a whole. Our district and schools support our teachers to provide each student with the support they need for academic success and personal well-being. I think you guys know where I'm going with this, right? I believe we are all collectively failing. We share cultural possibilities, respect interactions among stakeholders, enable students to thrive, fostering a positive relationship with the community, and positive images of the school. Again, ladies and gentlemen of the board, I do believe we are failing collectively as a whole. I could keep going in on this document. If anybody would like to see it, it is online under the Winchendon District Schools. I'm not going to insult anybody here's intelligence by keep reading this paper. There is a broken piece in the institution together collectively as a whole. We have parents arguing for their rights of their child, which they are, they should. They are the first and the most greatest successors of their children's education. We have an education system that seems to be fractured right now, and it is been Band-Aids put on, in my opinion, to hold it together. We have, again, teachers going out, but none coming in. The recent job postings have been posted within my recollection of last meeting that I was not here but watched over and over again, that the districting plan of moving and shuffling these children around has been paused for now, which is great, so we can work out a greater plan. But what about those children, or the teachers that were let go for this plan? If we have knowledge of musical backgrounds, children that have music in their backgrounds seem to strive better in reading, writing, and other aspects of their educational careers.
Mr. LeBlanc, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You've
Sir?
reached the 3-minute limit. I'm guessing the crowd might let you continue. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board at this time? All right, thank you. Go ahead. Oh,
No, by all means.
oh, yes. Please come up. We'll have you back, Adam.
Yeah, no problem.
My name is Stephen Gerard. It's my first time here, so bear with me. Coming in defensive of my daughter, Lana, at school. Since September, from September to March, she was being bullied, social media, bullied in the halls, so on and so forth. And I'm making this very short, by the way, because there is so much information here. I got a call from Mr. Shishoka, your vice principal, in December, saying that my daughter had told the teacher to F off and that he was suspending her, which of course, I don't condone that type of behavior. But when I found out why that this was going on, I raised some questions. I tried to work my best with the school. We developed a behavioral plan for my daughter. And at that meeting in December, I had asked the guidance counselor, the vice principal, the therapist, and a couple of the teachers that were there, and inquired about an IEP for my daughter. Because with the bullying and with everything else going on, her grades were slipping bad, failing. She was an emotional wreck. She was in guidance almost every day. We came up with a behavioral plan. I set rules in motion. One of those was not going to the bathroom every single class. You know, you can go in the middle, and so on and so forth. Let's fast forward to March. All these issues started coming up again. Teacher allowed my daughter to go out of class. My daughter ran into this student. Words were exchanged. My daughter decided it was enough's enough. Ended up getting into a fight. School rules, right? Can't get into a fight, right? Got to suspend them. That's the rule across the board. This individual happened to be a transgender individual. Let's fast forward another month. My daughter was suspended for 4 days for that. Same individual, same person my daughter fought, punched a girl in the face in your hallway. She was not suspended. Not suspended. No detention. No disciplinary action. And when I confronted Mr. Shishoka, about this issue. I was told, well, you have to understand there's other things involved. And I looked right at him and I said, sir, you looked me dead in my face and you told me that at any point in time a student puts hands on another student, your hands are tied and you have to suspend that student. I says, you're borderline discriminating against my daughter at this point. You've done nothing to help the situation. So I come here today about accountability. I'm sure there's other parents here who have had their child suspended for whatever reason, detentions for whatever reason. Your vice principal broke the law by not allowing my daughter back in December, who does need an IEP, by the way. We're going through that process finally now, that it took me threatening with an attorney, that it took me 4 months of emailing and phone calls for nothing. I still haven't got the timelines that I requested from your guidance counselor 6 weeks ago. However, where's the accountability for the teachers not doing these things? This man is setting his own rules in school. You have rules, and then you have his rules. Which rules do these kids follow? My daughter feels lost going into school because she has nobody to talk to. Who's she gonna talk to? What's gonna get done? Nothing. Nothing. And I'm a very proactive parent. Dad knows, okay? Any problems come up, I am there. I will handle that problem. But it's hard for me to handle that problem when the school sees my kid more than I do. So when I do come up to this and say, hey, we're gonna go this route now, we're gonna do this, this, and this, and nothing happens. I simply asked for an update once a week after this problem with the teacher. An update once a week, no cell phone use. That never happened. The only time I ever got an update was when she had a bad day. That was it. I got 2 emails in 4 months after that behavior plan was done.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. We have reached your 3-minute limit, but please hang on just a moment because there may not be anyone else that would like to speak. Sure. So would anyone else like to address the board at this time? Okay, please.
So my thing is, we hold our children accountable. These kids are 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. What happens to the person that's up here? He broke the law, right? I went to your principal and told your principal what was going on. Do you think I've had any resolve in the last 3 weeks after that? Nope. No resolve has come from any of these issues. They just keep sweeping it under the rug, sweeping it under the rug. And in my professional and my personal opinion, it's a political agenda being run in your school because you don't want to upset this group of people. So we got to treat this group of people like we're walking on eggshells. What about the other group of people? If there's rules for everybody, not just rules for the regular students, and then there's a separate set of rules for this particular group of students that's the new fad now. Rules are rules. Where's the accountability that we hold for our children, that you guys hold for our children in school? Suspending them for acting out. Well, why is she acting out? She's been to the principal, she's been to the vice principal, she's been to the guidance counselor, a therapist. Nothing gets done. The therapist, I had to fire the therapist, the in-school therapist. I asked for a timeline, she refused to give it to me. That's all I wanted was a basic timeline from September until now, all the stuff that's happened, no names, no nothing, but did I get that from anybody? No. The guidance counselor, the therapist. Now we're working on the principal. Nobody's helping. Nobody's doing anything. I would like some accountability, personally. This school is being run like the Wild West here. You know, like if we're gonna have rules, we're gonna have rules. If you expect us parents to enforce these rules, stick to them. Stick to them. If I requested an IEP in December, should I have had that IEP? If a student is having to stay after 4 days a week for help, and their parent says, well, why don't we try an IEP? And your vice principal, who has no, as far as I know, has no special education background, looks at me and says, no, she don't need it. Right there he's in violation, right there. Yeah, it's automatic I'm supposed to get that. Your principal told me that.
I'm sorry, we're at our
Yeah,
time.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Other comments? Mr. LeBlanc.
Going back on topic, with the realigning, unrealigning of the district as a whole, are those my question, and I know it can't be answered now, but it could probably be brought up the next meeting, are those teachers' contracts gonna be renewed, for being let go due to the reassignment of the school and the grade levels? This is a great concern, especially with that, not singling this gentleman out, but the music department. We know that music in Murdoch as a whole is a dying subject. We have a decent music educations going on right now. After seeing and being at the Memorial School presentation for Memorial Day, it would be a step back in our direction to get these kids into music, be musically inclined. Secondary is a great concern, and most important concern is there's information, personal identifiable information being sent to other families about students that is very concerning. Like the gentleman said, there should be accountability. Rumor mill, factor mill, hearsay, this is the same individual that did the investigations on a lot of the personnel in the school being relieved. I do believe that we should, as a community, as a board, address this situation and take another look. The school committee and you guys are the end-all be-all on the hire fire of teachers, superintendents, special education instructors, substitutes, bus drivers, etc. I believe we, as a whole, should demand to look at these again and to fine-tooth pick line by line on the failures and everything else, and what was remediation for those people being let go. Was there remediation? Because if there's no remediation and they're just getting shit canned to be, sorry, Lawrence, if you're here. If you're being fired to be fired, then there's no explanation, then there's something wrong. And we need to address that. Because we as parents, we're gonna support you whether we like it or not, because we want the education for our children. But we also have to, as parents, school board, teachers, everything else, because I think, I'm not bashing teachers, I think they're doing a hell of a job of what they're doing. And what they've done through the last 5 years, phenomenal. Can't praise them enough. But what we're doing to them, the students and everything else, is just causing chaos. We need to stop the bleeding, treat the wounds, and readjust, refocus. There shouldn't be a witch hunt. I'm sure all of you have been at wit's end with this witch hunt that's going on. We need to address it, we need to solve it, and we need to move forward, or else we're gonna be here every meeting with the same issues. And that's all I have to say. I thank you for your time. Thank you for doing what you're doing. I know it's not easy, but somebody has to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments from the hall? Yes.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. My name is Samantha Oliveira. At the last school committee meeting, it was quite clear and later confirmed by a shared email that Nicole Haro would be put on leave pending a district investigation. It is my understanding that rather than Nicole Haro being put on leave pending an investigation by the district, she went on FMLA within days of the last school committee meeting, which makes me ask the question, who approved Nicole Haro's FMLA? Not only does this keep us from correcting her incompetence, but it also keeps us from hiring a new director of pupil services. Now we are at a stalemate. What is going to be done to fix our special education department? We shouldn't expect our remaining staff to clean up the mess Nicole has left behind. Adding more work for teachers and staff is not a reasonable request. I ask that we consider bringing someone to meet with all parents in a forum to discuss how things will be addressed. Maybe have individual parent meetings to detail a child-specific plan of action. Bring in outside evaluators to coordinate testing over the summer. Request DESE's approval to host partial member team meetings over the summer to get IEPs completed before the fall. We need to get protocols in place to protect information. I believe our district also needs to create a hiring plan for vacancies and assess para-staff placement. We should be creating an SEL plan for training staff. I feel that it has been proven that Nicole Hero is not capable of doing her job. However, within days, Nicole Hero was approved for her FMLA. The timing of all this is suspicious. At the last school committee meeting, Nicole stated that she doesn't have enough staff with just one assistant and 2 secretaries. Let me remind you, Suzanne Michelle and Kathy Brooks not only ran the SPED department, they were our SPED department, and they also ran the pre-K program. Nicole acknowledged noncompliance at the last school committee meeting, and instead of an apology to parents, she threw her staff under the bus. She also listed Teachtown as one of her achievements since she's been here. Folks, that program was introduced under Suzanne Michelle during our remote learning period. Nicole had nothing to do with that. Nicole shared how a few nonverbal students received technology with communication apps. She stated this like she was doing parents a favor. If a child needs that to access the curriculum, then she is required to provide that. It felt like she was looking for a pat on the back for doing a portion of her job. Mr. King and Nicole Hero mentioned a new model and that it will need time to work. Why exactly did we need a new model? Have any of you read our special education TFM audit from May 2021? If not, I have brought copies. The audit was done a month before our previous director of pupil services, Suzanne Michelle, was let go. We were 100% compliant, but we let her go. 23 years of dedicated service to our staff and students and families, and 100% compliant, but we let her go. She also had no PRS complaints with DESE. Mr. King didn't like her, and it wasn't because she couldn't do her job. However, he has kept Nicole Hero. Mr. King worked with Suzanne Michelle for 2 years. Therefore, Mr. King knows what excellence looks like, yet he kept Nicole Hero. These are not parent opinions, these are facts. You cannot dispute DESE evaluations. I have lost faith in Mr. King's ability to make staffing choices. I ask that you please investigate the pattern of Mr. King's hiring and firing at non-renewals. If possible, I also ask that you speak with those who have received non-renewal or have been terminated under Mr. King. There are 2 sides to every story, and we need more information. I ask for a vote of no confidence in Mr. King. He knew and still knows Nicole Hero was non-compliant, and he knew about requests from DESE that were ignored by Nicole Hero. He covered for her incompetence for 2 years. That's indifference, and that should be grounds for removal.
Ms. Oliveira?
Yes, sir.
Let me please pause you for
Okay.
1
Yeah,
second,
sure,
just
sure.
to check.
Yeah.
Would anyone else like to address the board at this time? Thank you. Please go ahead.
I also want to address another concern. Mr. Vine, I respectfully request that you consider stepping down from your position on the school committee. Sir, I feel you have lost touch with your students and their families. I ask that you imagine someone broke into your home and stole something very precious to you. Now imagine you had that thief on video. You know who stole and what was stolen. But when you tried to explain this to investigators, they shook their heads, rolled their eyes, and shouted at you from across the table. How would that make you feel? Would you be frustrated because you weren't being heard? Would you be so angry that something so precious to you had been stolen? This is how our families are feeling. Nicole Hero stole our children's educations for the last 2 years. Parents were frustrated, and you weren't sympathetic to that frustration. You were intolerant of it. That is not why you were elected, sir. As I have said before, I'm 15 years into our special ed journey, folks, and I have never seen anything like what is going on in our district. We need to do everything we can to make sure we are not put in this situation again. In closing, I respectfully request the removal of Mr. King and Nicole Hero. Our district has fallen apart under their watch, and it's time to cut our losses and find administrators who are both competent and committed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oliveira. Other comments?
At the last school committee meeting, Mr. King spoke to the different colleges that seniors had been accepted into and kind of that timeline. And although there's probably not a bigger supporter of kids going to big D1 schools than me, because that is my kid's goal, unfortunately, but I think you can directly correlate the graduating class this year with the timeline of when Summit was begun as well. And we hear a lot about how Summit isn't a great program from a lot of parents, probably some in this room, because once they get into high school, they're not using the same program. And they go back to pen and paper, if you will. But what I find interesting is that the skills that you attain from Summit carry them throughout the next 4 years of high school, whether they complete the work the same way online in an online platform or not. So Summit, also Mrs. Vazina's thing that she brought in, should be looked at to further continue. And two, I don't believe you have anybody else in the middle school that is certified to run Summit next year, because you got rid of the one staff that actually did it. So bring back Vazina.
Thank you. Others? Other comments for the school committee? Just checking, double checking, triple checking? Okay, not seeing any. We will continue. That brings us to the portion of our agenda that is our consent agenda. Our only consent agenda item tonight is the minutes from May 4th. The minutes are in your packet and were emailed to you some time ago. Happy to take a motion on the minutes if there is one.
Mr. Chair,
Greg?
I'd move to approve the minutes of May 4th, 2023 school committee meeting as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Sorry about that. Thank you for the second. Any discussion on the minutes? Okay, those in favor, or excuse me, let's do the vote. Alicia?
Yay.
Greg?
Aye.
David?
Abstain?
Abstain. Karen?
Abstain.
And the chair votes aye, so 3-0-0. Nope, 3-0-2, sorry. All right, thank you very much. That brings us to our superintendent's report, and I think the first item up is the Special Education Department update.
Sure, thank you. Just a quick update on special education since our Director of Student Support is on leave. We have had a few folks step up and help support the Special Education Department over this past week, where the focus has really been to ensure that our scheduled meetings and evaluations take place prior to the end of the year that were already scheduled, and at this point we are confident that those will take place as scheduled. We've been making an effort to reach out directly to every family that has meetings scheduled, to contact them personally with phone calls, and ensure that those meetings, just let them know that the meetings are still on track. We have all the folks in place to run those meetings as we would have prior to Ms. Rubin on leave. And at this point, we feel very comfortable that those will all take place before the end of the year if they were scheduled to do as such. The email address that we put up, specialeducation@winchtonk12.org, for any families that had questions or concerns, is actively being monitored. At this point, I think we've had a couple of emails come into that email address, so if parents had questions about their meetings, about their IEPs, about their evaluations, whatever that is, and weren't sure where to contact, those are being directed to the special education email, at which point we do have someone responding to those emails or making the phone calls, whatever happens to be appropriate relative to the communication. So at this point, that's what we are doing for special education as far as a department, is making sure at this right now that we finish the year strong in terms of making sure all the meetings are met, all the deadlines are met, and evaluations take place.
Questions? I'll ask a question. Yes, Karen, go ahead. In addition to the meetings, obviously the meetings are being covered. It sounds like the plan, sounds like those things are continuing. As far as the responsiveness to requests for paperwork, some of those things that Ms. Haru told us have been a challenge in the past, where do those stand now?
So it depends on the paperwork. Obviously, some of that is special education specific, some of it is not, quite frankly. So if it comes to paperwork specifically required for some of the meetings, I'll acknowledge that a lot of that, some of that I've been doing personally, have reached out to a few of the families who I think are here or have been here in the past, requesting some of those files. I've communicated with those families and done everything we can do to get those into their hands. So to date, that's how, what's been out there, that's how it's been handled. You know, I believe in communication with some of those families that I think that they've received everything that we have that I'm able to offer. You know, again, I can't offer something that we truly don't have in a file, but at this point, we have made every effort to get those files. The exception at this point is still, you know, the ongoing piece, which is a little bit, I think, separate from what you're asking, but I'll use this opportunity to cover it, is emails and processing emails as a part of student records, which I don't necessarily consider, you know, a special education issue. It's a separate piece, which is just a student's records request. As I've mentioned in here, I think prior, we are, you know, really inundated, if you will, in a manner of speaking, with the volume of, sort of the number of requests against the volume of emails associated with particular email accounts. So I did email out letters of assurance to families today that they will receive those on a first-come, first-served basis. And what I mean by that is in the order in which those requests came into the district, we are processing those in the same order to go out. So first in, first out type of thing. And we are contracting with a company for those services to electronically redact all the names out of emails so that we can get those to the families. We just don't have the manpower to go through, I don't know, 6,000 or more emails to do the redactions. So we are at this point squared away on that, and we've committed to that deadline. Some folks should receive those much more quickly than others based on when they submitted their requests.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Karen?
Okay, so that's your entire special ed update?
That's my
correct?
update.
Okay. So I have a few questions regarding, you say, I understand that you say there's an email address out there for parents that is being monitored. Who's monitoring it?
Our assistant special education director.
Okay, and so is she going to be the person that we will be holding accountable for all the timelines and everything going forward at this point right now?
At this point, we have a special education director or a student support director who is on leave, and that person is still, in general, the person that's accountable. That is the person who is in that position and still maintains accountability.
Well, she's on leave, so, I mean...
Doesn't dissuade anything from her accountability. Right now, the assistant special education director is monitoring those emails and making sure that everything is responded to.
I find that interesting because if somebody's on leave, under whatever leave they're under, she's not the person that's going to be contacted by DESE directly.
She will not. Our assistant special education director will be, and I will most likely be copied on such an email.
Right. So, in this case, Caitlin Smith is the one that is going to be contacted by DESE if
Correct.
there's a timeline or whatever. Okay.
That is correct.
Thank you. So that was the answer I was looking for. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Also, so is she the one that's running most of these team meetings now?
The meetings have stayed constant with who was running those in the first place, quite frankly. I think there's been one exception to this point. So Caitlin Smith has been running a number of meetings, as she has always been. I think she has been primarily focused, and, you know, again, I'm not 100% on this in terms of knowing who is running which meetings, but when we met the following week, we went through who runs which meetings, which ones have gaps, and where do we need to fill. For the most part, Caitlin Smith continued running the meetings she was already scheduled for. There were a couple, I believe 2 off the top of my head, that Ms. Haru was responsible for running, and at this point, one has already taken place, and that was run by an agreed-upon individual and qualified individual. And the other, I believe, takes place tomorrow, and Caitlin will be running that meeting.
Okay. And so we have, I did receive the PRS report that you got 2 weeks ago, and you sent it to me yesterday.
Yep.
And you sent it only to me, which I would have
Requested it, so I
preferred.
sent it to you, yes.
Right, I understand, but I would have liked you to send it to the whole board, but whatever, that's fine. My concern is that I don't see the incidents, and we can get into the semantics of incidents versus complaints versus how they qualify. I know that this is not outlining all of the incidents that have been reported, because we have had parents send to this board as a whole and to you some of these incidents. So I don't know how we figure out where the delay is in getting those from DESE in this report.
I don't have insight into that.
Okay.
That's the report that DESE sent at our request to send us a PRS report for the incidents that have been submitted, the complaints that have been submitted, whatever language you want to use. That is what was returned to us from DESE.
Okay.
I don't have control over what they respond with. I can tell you that on the date on that particular response, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not looking at it, but I believe the report was run on, I think, June 1st. I think it says 6/1 in the corner.
Yeah, I can't get this to open right now. We know I am not Apple friendly. However, you get the incident reports as soon as they, or the incident uploads as soon as they are generated to DESE. They get you, a copy sent to you.
Yeah, the PRS complaint, it is assigned a
Right.
number, and that's the process, yeah.
Right. So what I would like to ask is that I need to know how you, we need to know how you are addressing those while Nicole's on leave, because Caitlin Smith doesn't necessarily have the background to be dealing with that. And as much as I understand that you say Nicole is monitoring things, she is on leave.
No, I did not say she's monitoring things. That is not what I said.
Okay, so how are you addressing that?
The complaints that come in don't always just go to, you know, the student support director. So as an example, if something comes in relative to the high school, it would not be out of line for the Department of Education to actually reach out to that person directly for a first-level response. They often take a statement from an employee that might be mentioned, and I'm going to work to really avoid names or even scenarios, but, you know, that's a very common piece. So it really depends, to be honest, it just depends on the nature of the complaint that is registered with DESE as to how they proceed in their first steps. Not oftentimes, they can at times hear a response. We can provide them with, I don't know, I'm just trying to be simple, an email or something that was sent to a family, something to that end, and they might just close that case based on just the response, and it goes no further. So it really just depends on the level of escalation, what that happens to be, and so on. At this point, I'm in contact with our DESE sort of point person, I guess you would call them. I'm not sure what their title is. It's a mouthful. But I speak with her regularly just to monitor and make sure that we are on process with whatever those might be, and work with whoever the correct people are within the district to get the responses back to the department in a timely fashion.
Okay, because I know that there are several people that may not be here tonight that have spoken openly at these meetings that still have open complaints within the district, and I'm concerned that they are not, their responses have not been handled. So I do think that I am concerned that we are not addressing them. So I need to know, like, who is, I know ultimately the buck stops with you as our superintendent. So I'm holding you accountable because you are the person I need to hold accountable at this point. So I need to know what you are doing to make sure that these cases are actually meeting, you know, you're getting these responses back and you're dealing with what needs to be dealt with. Because at this point, whether it's, and I'm just going to give an example. I'm not saying that these are any of the cases, so let me be clear. I'm just going to make something up right now, okay?
Go
It's
for it.
not anybody that we've had in front of us. So let's say we have a student who lost services because of service provider. Let's say an SLP, because we know we don't have enough of those,
It's a
okay?
great example.
Okay, so we missed SLP services, and because of that, a complaint was filed, so we owe SLP services, so, and we dropped the ball and whatever, and you need to make sure those services are made up, and for whatever reason, we're in the midst of that, so I need to make sure that you are going forward with making sure that that is going to happen.
Yes. I mean, that's a great example, by the way. I mean, it's a real example. We've talked about it in here many times, right? So to use that example, if I may, that would come into DESE as whatever the, whomever it is that registers that complaint. That goes to DESE through some.
Let's use me.
Okay.
I'm the bad person. I'm the.
So Ms. Cass submitted an SLP complaint. That goes to DESE. Now, I have no idea, what their timelines are. I know it's an electronic process at this point, which changed in 2018, where they've made that electronic. So that would get submitted to DESE. I have no idea what their turnaround time is. I don't know how that works.
Mm-hmm.
That would then come into us to sort of say, hey, are you aware of this? Have you addressed, what's your sort of very quick response? That might be a phone call. They might call and ask. They might send an email to say, could you reach out to us? We'd just like to hear, sort of a very cursory response to hear about how we can proceed with that. So maybe in that scenario, let's use that as an example that we haven't worked with the family at all. We haven't worked with you at all on trying to provide some sort of compensatory services or alternative services or whatnot, right? And that's all we can say back to DESE. Gosh, we didn't know this child wasn't receiving services. Our fault. DESE would likely then, and this isn't, I'm relaying this as if this is a quick, hey, how you doing? It's not. This is over, obviously,
I know.
multiple emails. Well, you may know, but not everybody knows.
I know.
So this might go on over a course of a number of emails, at which point we acknowledge in that scenario, didn't realize that wasn't happening, parents correct, they'll respond, how are you going to address it, what are your compensatory services? We would respond with whatever that is. DESE then takes time to review our response, puts together a decision/response to to you and to us to notify either you are out of compliance, not out of compliance. If there's a number of items within the complaint, they will actually go through and enumerate those. Some of those things they don't have purview over and they don't address, so on and so forth. But in this instance, we would have submitted to them how we would deliver those compensatory services. That would be shared with both instances, and they would likely, quote-unquote, close that case with a note, as you saw in that piece in the margin, saying, close compensatory services. I'm just making that up. But it would be, it's potentially a lengthy process, and that one was a simple explanation. Had we, as an example, communicated with you and said, gosh, Ms. Cast, we don't have any SLPs. We have worked with this agency, this agency, this agency. Here is what we are able to offer you in this moment. We are offering you virtual speech services. It's all that we can offer at this time, and we've exhausted all of our resources. We would have communicated that to DESE. Back and forth, they might have viewed that as, we had done our due diligence, that we had offered services, and you had either accepted or denied. We would, of course, have to provide evidence of whatever it was. Maybe we had sent emails, maybe, evidence that we had reached out to one of the collaboratives, that type of thing. So those are the things that sort of, make the process a little bit more lengthy. And it's a case-by-case scenario, to be quite frank. Some of what you've mentioned in here, some of the families that are, that have here and raised some pieces, I will not go through and identify individuals. However, I do know that there's, just based on dates and they call them PRS number, they're assigned a number, obviously. I will fully acknowledge that not all of those are closed, that they're, in process in one way or another. I can't give you individual specifics. In general, I wouldn't do that here, and off the top of my head, I'm not able to do that here. So,
Right.
But I do know that what you're referring to, I think if you look at that bottom of that, there's a number that are not currently closed, and we are actively working on those. And I'm
that's
actively
right.
engaged. I'm personally actively engaged in a number of those.
Okay, well, that's what I want to make sure that you are, because,
I am.
we are in a process where, we are, as a board, being included on these emails, and we are not seeing your responses to the emails from these people, and, whether that's because you don't respond and including us, and that's whatever, but, we can't, and honestly, in speaking to our PQA person, and I may be using old language because I've been doing this too long, but, these are since these people have already identified themselves to us, you can actually forward those actual complaints to us without redaction. Other ones you can forward to us with redaction. I've already made this comment through 4 meetings now. I can send you the guidance from DESE if you'd like. And I know I meant to do that before and I failed, and I will take ownership of that. But it would be great if you sent that along with the checklist of what you have completed to help us understand where you are in the process, just because it would help us to know where you are in helping the people that are coming here, because then we know that you've helped them, because we're in turmoil and our special ed department is imploding, and it imploded And for me, having an imploding special ed department, just absolutely not acceptable.
Agreed.
And we need to fix it, and we need to fix it quickly. And we need to know who's at the helm, and we need to right the ship quickly. And even though, yes, you are involved, you are not a special ed director. And right now, we don't.
I want to clarify that. I have not claimed to be a special ed director.
I did not say.
I just want to finish. I did not make that claim. I did not make a claim that I am acting in any role for special education. What I said tonight was, you asked me about my sort of action within the complaint system, and I'm actively involved, and I take those very seriously, and I want to see these things resolved in the right way. Secondly, I would say that relative to special education specifically, I am not involved. I defer to counsel. We have special education counsel who I will defer to in any particular place before we make any actions on anything we do to make sure that we are in complete compliance. But I have not claimed, nor will I, to say that I am involved in special education directly. That is, I will fully acknowledge I am not a special educator, and if you talk to the majority of parents that I've spoken with, I will always make that claim with them as well. That is not my background, and I do not claim it to be.
I was not claiming that you claimed that, and I wouldn't even say that you claimed you played one on TV. Okay, Thad, don't worry about that. However, can you clarify for me, because you just said that you defer to special education counsel. Is that somebody besides Kevin Bresnahan?
Yes.
Okay, who is our special education?
We have separate counsel for separate things.
Okay, so who is our special education counsel?
Our special education or student support, more that type of counsel, not just special education, but more student-related things.
So who is that?
I cannot pronounce her last name, I'm going to be really honest. Felicia V is her last initial is V, and I'm not going to.
Can you send that to
Yeah.
us, please? Okay.
That's the special education / student support council. Part of the same, it's part of the same agreement, same law firm.
Okay.
Yep.
Because I would, then, and not to go off special ed in particular, but just in that case, I would like a list of all of our councils.
That's it. You got it.
Oh, so we just have the two?
That's it.
Okay.
There's just two. There's personnel council and there's student council, if you
Okay.
will. Yep.
All right. I had another question, just give me a second. Because I did not realize we had a separate council for special ed. That is good information to know. That might explain a lot.
While Karen's thinking, other folks
Yes,
with
please.
questions?
If I may?
Please.
Mr. Chair, thank you. So this is my third meeting, and on 5/16, we had multiple public comments. We had actually 20. Out of those 20, there was 6 that were related or directly related to special education issues. On June 1st, there were 16 public comments. 5 of those were directly related to special education. Tonight, is that
Me.
Oh, that was you.
Thank you. Al.
Tonight, we had 5 public comments, and 2 of those were directly related to the special education department. So there's 13 public comments or complaints. I've received numerous emails, as has the board, and I know, Thad, you've been in the loop on a lot of those. 13 emails that are directly related to the issues at the special education department. My wife served in this seat 2 years ago. She did a 3-year term, and I asked her, how many complaints did you get when you sat on the board about the special education? Her answer was 0. So I would use the term, not turmoil, but we are in a crisis in our school district with our special education. Mr. King, I would just like you to assure the parents who are concerned about their child's special education and assure them that things are going to be, as you said in announcing Mrs. Harrow's leave, that they would be no different, while they have to be different. And I want you to assure the people here tonight and out watching is how is it going to not be different when you're down a director of the pupil services?
I think what I said, I think the spirit of that was that there will be no difference in the delivery of those meetings and evaluations through the end of the year, right? That is the spirit of that I want to make sure that everybody who is in the, I'll just use the word pipeline, if you will, loosely, is that they will be attended to and receive their meetings and/or evaluations as scheduled. That was my number one priority and is what we have worked on for the entire last week to make sure that those things are scheduled and will take place. And so that is my assurance that I have asked everybody. I have asked our department, I have asked our clerk, our assistant special education director, and again, I'm not going to sit here and say 100% of those folks have been called, but I have asked that every family is called and directly asked if, make sure that A, they know that their meeting is scheduled, B, that they have what they need, and C, if they have any other questions prior to that meeting. That is what I am looking for to truly make sure that we can finish this year in such a way that we're not going to make any excuse as to why someone's evaluation didn't take place or why their meeting didn't take place or their evaluation didn't take place. That is my number one priority at this time. In terms of follow-through relative to the department overall, that is something that we've heard the complaints, and I will acknowledge that we need to take a deeper look and make sure that there are things we are doing right and there are things we are doing wrong. And you can say that about any particular business. It doesn't matter what it is. Everybody has something to improve on. I'll never turn away from that. So we need to find those things and find the ways that we need to improve those. And that's the work that we will endeavor in after we make sure that everybody gets the meetings that they require and the evaluations that they require.
Thank you. And while I
Welcome.
appreciate all of the work that the staff is doing, the special education teachers, everybody involved, the parents, whoever is involved, I appreciate what they have done. But in using a baseball analogy, sometimes you have to look at the manager. And when you look at the manager, even though the team may not be functioning to level because they're shorthanded, they don't have enough players on the field, you have to fire the manager sometimes. And if you're taking the steps, and I trust you, and I believe that you're taking the steps to fix this problem. The problem is it got to this problem. And if we couldn't do it with a director of pupil services, how can we do it when we're down, the manager's gone? And how do we assure, again, assuring the parents that are looking for their records, assure the parents that their meetings are going to be held? Sometimes you build a reputation on what has been done, not what you're going to do. So I think in this case, we need some tangible action. We need some tangible evidence that we see that is turning around. We see, because we don't know how long we're going to be without a director of pupil services. But I just think that we're here, the school committee is here to make sure that this is fixed. We're not here to fire people and let people go. We're here to work with you to get this under control now. So I don't want to say that that's the solution, but I want to be part of the solution. And listening to the public comments has enlightened me over the last 3 meetings, because they are the ones that elected me. All the people out there watching, I hope my support is out there, but they elected me to come here and to do the policy making that was necessary, not to run the school department. That's Mr. King's job. But we have to overlook, we have to supervise, right, Mr. King, and give him the resources that he's going to need to get this special education issue under wraps and address it. So I'm not here like I said, I'm not a headhunter. I'm here because the taxpayers of Winchendon, the parents of Winchendon have put me in this seat. And this is only my... only my 3rd meeting, and already I'm exhausted. But I know that we can get through this. It's just, how do we get through this? And we have to get through it as a community, as a school, as the town government side, everybody, the business community, everybody's got to come together, because our schools will not be successful unless every student is brought along.
I don't think I can follow that. Sorry.
Stole your steam.
All right.
No, you're good.
Thank you very much. Our next topic is district update.
Well, excuse me, I'm sorry. Are you, I'm sorry. Okay, are you going to cover the, go ahead, do the district update. Hopefully you'll cover what I was going to ask. Go ahead.
Okay. District update, I hope I cover what Ms. Cast was going to ask. We'll see. Really, I think one of your asks a week ago was really about personnel and openings, and I think it's been raised here this evening. It's been raised in a couple of other venues. So the primary piece that I wanted to address tonight with the district update is just sort of that, to give a little background on personnel and openings. And I've covered this in another meeting and talking about sort of some of the processes, and I don't want to belabor that. So when we have openings each year, and I'm going to get to the openings going back a number of years, when we have openings in a district, those are for various reasons, and they pop up at various times over the year, of course. Those can be from non-renewals, those can be from retirements, those can be from resignations, they can be from all those different types of things. What I do not have necessarily is for each year a breakdown of what each of those look like. We don't, I don't have that at my disposal very easily right away. But what I do have is just sort of the number of openings to give folks an idea of what a district is confronted with on an annual basis. I will acknowledge that as well that it's dynamic in that what we have today could change next week, can change tomorrow in terms of new openings as a result of we've had in the past a significant other being transferred and have to move across the country, another opportunity somewhere, leaving teaching, whatever it is. You wouldn't generally you can't get, however, a late retirement. The contract, you could retire, but the contract has some stipulations into how we would manage that. But of course, somebody could retire at any time. So kind of just looking backwards, I asked to kind of get an idea to just give us some general feelings about what this has looked like over the past few years. Of course, COVID makes it a little bit wonky in the middle, but I'm just going to go back to entering the 18-19 school year, so just kind of taking a look at the 5-year window before COVID and sort of coming out. In the 18-19 school year, entering sort of, I guess, maybe exiting the school year prior and kind of trying to get into the 18-19 school year, there were at minimum 17 listed vacancies or posted positions in our district. I'm not covering here stipended types of positions or those types of things. It's those pop up every single year. They're pretty standard. That we post the same things. So 18-19 school year, there's at least 17. I say at least from the perspective of, we're just pulling old records in terms of new teacher orientations, those types of things, but not everybody has to attend those depending on your position and so on. So there was at least 17 that year going into the 18-19 school year. The 19-20 school year, entering the 19-20 school year, I guess kind of exiting 18-19, there were at least 13. And again, I'm going to say at least because we might have filled one before we exited the 18-19 school year and before we started 19-20, so those are not necessarily popping up. 2021 was the COVID year, quite frankly, so it's a wacky year. We did have 3 positions that we posted for that particular year. If you'll recall, there was a lot. I think most of you were on the board then. There was a lot going on that year. There was a lot of non-renewals across the district, but at the end of the day, we really had going into the 2021 school year, and that was the year that we started off completely remote. We had three openings that year. We weren't really growing, and in fact, going into that year, our budget cycle was that we had to reduce by 6 faculty. I want to be really clear what that means. So in the middle of the 19-20 school year and going into the 2021, which was COVID, we were faced with a budget hit that year where we were forced to reduce faculty by 6. I only remember that because I was the principal at the time and confronted with trying to, choose who do you eliminate, what positions can we do without. That is very different from non-renewals, and that's why I just want to make the point very clear. So reduction in force is what we would have called that, or RIF is what we refer to it internally. That is, generally speaking, a result of budgetary constraints. So as we were leaving the 19-20 school year and entering 2021, we were already faced with trying to reduce by 6. We ended up posting for 3 as we entered the 2021 school year. 21-22, kind of our first year then coming out of COVID, we had, and hold your seats, we had sort of, as we left that year, we had approximately 30 positions posted as we came out of COVID. And these span from, what I'm looking at here is custodians, paras, teachers, really any hireable position. This does not include food services or busing or anything like that. We don't own that. But any other general position. So that was for 2021, correct? 21-22. 22-23, same number, approximately 30. That's this school year, coming into this school year. So just kind of a point there is that's when we started, both of these years we saw some growth in terms of budget. I think in last school year, I think we actually added 7 positions into the general budget, and this is off the top of my head, and we also added a handful of positions into ESSER that at the time we thought were not going to be needed going forward. So if you'll recall, we added COVID nurses and some of those things, but those were in the ESSER grant, so approximately 30. The 23-24 school year, so again, now going into next year, what we currently have posted or listed and sort of going through and checking these off, we have approximately 13 to 15 posted positions or openings. Again, the reason I say approximately is it's dynamic. In fact, we made an offer today to somebody. We have filled a couple of positions for nurses that we had added. One was an added position, one wasn't. So we're at around 13 to 15. The breakdown on that specifically is, I believe, Memorial is 3 positions, Toy Town, I'm looking at, I believe, 2, the middle school 5, and the high school, I believe, 2. That I know that does not add up to 13 to 15. There are some district-wide positions. We have maintained, to your earlier example, Ms. Cass, speech and language pathologist, we have maintained a posting for that now for 2 years. I think where we have consistently had 2, we've had 2 openings posted continually over the past 2 years that we just refresh. So that's currently where our positions sit. The postings that we have and the openings that we have, generally speaking, again, I'm not going to go into individuals, but there were a handful of quote-unquote non-renewals. Again, very different from RIF or a reduction in force, which is budgetary. So we did have non-renewals. Just to be clear, and I spoke about this a number of meetings ago, had nothing to do with the reorganization. The renewals are, the non-renewals are principal-based by sort of MGL and DESE guidelines. The principals have the authority to essentially execute non-renewals. My letter, my signature is on the paper that goes out, but that's at the principal's request as to who they non-renew. Those folks receive a letter. It is not, the ones that we had this year are not budgetary. As you know, we expanded our positions, and we're not related to the reorganization. So that is where we stand today.
That's a lie.
That's a lie. Jess did not put up Jenna.
Folks, I'm so sorry.
No, that needs to be on record. That's important.
That's a lie.
What? Questions from the board, comments from the board?
Someone asked that.
Mr. Chair,
Karen?
Thank you.
before, can you first explain for those who may not know what a non-renewal is? Because not everybody understands that terminology.
Yeah, sure. And that's what we talked about a few meetings ago. I think it was the meeting you missed. A non-renewal, so by law, if you will, to kind of separate from other unions. The teachers' union is very different from any other union that we have in terms of how you go about personnel. The other unions, so whether that's our secretaries' union, our paraprofessionals' union, our custodians' union, those all sort of have, their contract overall has a 90-day sort of trial period where a person can be asked to not continue to work for the district within those 90 days if you don't think that's working out for whatever reason. Those the unions have that. The teachers' union is a little bit different, but it's not governed by their contract per se. It's governed by MGL, Mass General Law, which is to say there is a 90-day caveat for teachers as well. So there is a 90-day notice that a teacher new to the district, I want to be clear, that's not a new teacher. When I talk about these things, that's a teacher that is new to our district and on our contract. So they could come from, I don't know, wherever, Narragansett with 20 years of experience. They start over when they leave district. So there is a 90-day caveat there by law, not very regularly used, to let someone go from a teacher's contract, if you will, in the first 90 days. That being said, the law also is very clear that at the end of each of the first 3 years, that a teacher can be, quote-unquote, non-renewed. That is very different, again, from a RIF, which is generally budgetary. So at the end of each of the first 3 years, a teacher can be non-renewed. By law, no reason given. By counsel, advised to not give reasons. That's not just our counsel, that is MASS counsel, that's MASC counsel, it's pick whomever you want. It's very standard practice, so at the end of each 3 years, at the end of each year of a teacher's employment, the principals are allowed to ask the superintendent for a non-renewal letter for a given individual. As a former principal, I respect those decisions from those folks and simply say, I provide them that letter. It is not in any way necessarily evaluative. It's independent of evaluation. A person could have exemplary at the end of the first 2 years, or they could have needs improvement or anything else. It doesn't matter what's on the It's independent of the evaluation. It is something that the union, here we use MTA, we're Mass Teachers Association district. It's, I don't know how to put it any simpler than there's no real recourse.
There's no tenure.
There's no, so again, so there's no recourse in the first 3 years. 3 years and a day is is the old definition, meaning the first day of the next school year, you obtain what used to be called tenure.
Tenure.
We don't use that word anymore.
I know.
We call it professional status. I struggle with that because there's also professional licensure, so to not mix the two up. Professional status is what you're referring to as tenure, at which point anyone who has been, if you're not going to bring someone back at that point, it's evaluative, and it's a completely different process. It is 100% about evaluation, improvement plans, et cetera, et cetera. But in the first 3 years, it's essentially at will at the end of each year. Does that cover everything you'd like me to cover relative to that?
As far as that goes, I just thought it might be helpful
Yep.
for us to get that out there. Now, in the case of, say, someone who has been employed in the district in another position and then took a teaching position and still retaining a position in the district, how is that handled if they have had several years in the district in another position?
Sure, so I'm not going to talk about individuals. I'm going to use a different example.
Right.
Let's say that someone moved from our secretarial union, I don't know, just picking one, to the custodial. They moved contracts, at which point, it's a different job function, it's a different contract. They are then bound by, in that particular example, would be the 90-day sort of temporary period that they would have on their new contract, and if they were not successful being a custodian for whatever particular reason that we didn't feel like was working out, they would have the ability to be dismissed, and that particular union is aware of that, generally speaking, as is the individual.
Okay. Was that your total, as far as your district update, was that your whole district update?
Yep.
Okay, because, again, and I apologize, because again, I am not Apple friendly. I'm not going to say Apple is not friendly with me. I am not Apple friendly. I had asked at the last meeting for a request of clarification now that the reorganization has been canceled. I wasn't asking about openings like that.
Okay.
I was asked, and I sent this to Ryan a couple days ago. I'm reading from the email directly. I wanted to know where and what positions are still within each school building. It would be really great if we just got an organizational chart for each school, because at this point I feel like we're all confused.
Can I answer that really easily?
Huh?
So,
This was sent, I sent it Monday to Ryan, and Ryan sent me an email saying that he shared it with you on Monday.
okay, so like I said, it's a relatively straightforward answer. The structure that we have today, meaning this school year, is the same structure that we have next year.
Okay.
That is the message that I conveyed to families and have mentioned here multiple times. So in terms of what next year looks like versus what the reorg, next year looks like no different than we've had this entire year going forward. In terms of structures, org charts within schools are very interesting because by law, every single person in a school building reports to one person.
Right, I understand that.
Well, then you understand the org chart.
No,
So
I know.
they all report to
I know.
the principal. It is a very unique situation in terms of management structure, but that is the law, if you will, MGL law around a school building, quite frankly.
Okay, so we have not eliminated any positions or added any new positions to any of our school buildings?
We have added positions from the budget when we were in here.
Well,
and
okay, I'm sorry. So let me clarify.
Sure.
Because I know that under the reorg, there was a plan for like a new administrator there was going to be a new VP position, vice principal. Is there still a new vice principal
There was
position?
going to be a change of deans to vice principals from the perspective of that some buildings now had additional, faculty, if you will, so there was a need for that. It wasn't additional, that was not at the time additional individuals. That was sort of a change in structure, if you will, from a dean to a vice principal, but not an addition of positions or a reduction of positions. I think that answers your question, or I think that's what you're asking.
Well, I guess, all right, so are we changing titles? How are we,
We are back to, again,
just deans?
we are where we started.
Okay.
I can't say it
See,
another, I
this
just
is
can't
where
give it to you another
The
way.
org charts come in a little bit.
It's where we started.
Right, okay, that's what I want to clarify, because I think, and I will say this as somebody who is trying to follow along too, and I have followed along since the beginning. That I think people are very confused, and then you throw in the non-renewals, and there's just a whole lot of just not knowing where everybody is, even though, yes, it should be very clear, because you're in the thick of it. We're not living in those buildings every day, so forgive us for not, having the picture in our head at every moment. So that's why I ask these questions, so that I can get the picture in my head. And so we can clarify for the people out here and in TV land.
Well, I'll ask you
8
to
of
keep,
them watching.
I'll ask you to keep your current picture. It's the picture that we
Okay,
have for
thank
next
you.
year.
I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Other questions?
If I may, just try
Yes.
to keep it brief, Mr. Chair. So, according to the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, it is the responsibility of the superintendent to oversee the hiring, evaluation, and handling of personnel issues, and it is responsibility of the school committee to evaluate the superintendent's effectiveness in these matters. And I don't know what to compare it to, because the numbers of the vacancies, the 30 last year, 30 this year. I'm not sure, I've been out of school for a long time, but I can assure you that even in a big district like Ashburnham, Westminster, I don't think they reached those numbers in vacancy. I know it's different times now. But, so in the process, and I'm not going to reveal any personnel information, but is it true that, so the building principal issues the non-renewals?
No, so again, the building principal supplies, if you kind of go into MGL and whatnot, right, the building principals, what they like to say is the building principal is the CEO of their building. That's kind of common parlance, if you will, right? However, the superintendent, what the principals can't do is expend funds, right? They don't have the authority, if you will, to expend funds. So to just get a little bit more clear would be when we go to hire someone, as an example, the principal does not have the authority to give a salary because they don't have the authority to spend said funds. So in the same vein, the same is true in the opposite direction. But what they do have is the ability to do the hiring. So they say to me, Mr. King, I am recommending to hire Joe Smith for English. So I take that in, and really what I do is process that relative to payroll. To say, great, you vetted this person, this is your person, you've done whatever you need to do, and I vet that relative to where they fit on our salary scale. The two of us do, but I sign that final piece, right? In the opposite direction, it's sort of similar in that they make that recommendation, again, as the quote-unquote CEO of their buildings, to who they, at the end of each of those 3 years, if they would like to non-renew any individuals. If that's the case,
Yeah.
they give me that person's name, I write the letter and sign the letter. Again, I would say it comes back to finances.
So if the building principal, the CEO, does not give you any names for non-renewal, do you have the authority to do a non-renewal?
In theory, yes.
Did that happen at all this year?
It may have.
My next question would be, aside from the resignations, retirements, and terminations, the non-renewal part of it, if, do we know what number of non-renewals?
Sure.
What is the number?
I could
of
give you
those?
a number, but I want to give you a quick caveat on the number, because we also have licensing issues this year. And what I mean by that is emergency licenses. So a big deal coming out of COVID is these quote-unquote emergency licenses, which expire. And so we do not, and it's this district's policy, to not have someone in a position without a license, if you will. I don't know what the policy is off the top of my head, but just telling you that in general. So we had, I believe, 6 non-renewals, and there were possibly 3 that were license-based, one of which who has rectified that situation, and at least one who has rectified that licensing issue and is retained based on their license.
So would you agree if I were to say that obviously the hiring and the non-renewal on this end are completely connected, and if there's a deficiency in the hiring part, because people who don't reach the professional status after the 3 years in one day, would you agree with me that perhaps that part of it is not effective? Because if I'm hiring all these people or approving the building CEO's recommendations, and then you have a large turnover of non-renewals, do you see that as an issue with the effectiveness of the hiring process?
Typically, I don't, to be frank, in that this is a very standard process across the state. We are not unique in non-renewing individuals. It is there for a reason. As you well know as an employer, I assume, not everybody works out. But I can't fire my wife, that would be terrible. I will not speak to that. But I respect that. I've been in that boat. But generally speaking, it is, and this is a change, by the way, in law, somewhere around 2011, 10, somewhere like that. There was a lot of change relative to how these things are handled. And no, I don't see it as a problem. It's a very common practice. You can see it, by the way, as people apply sometimes. Some folks will acknowledge that when they apply for jobs. It's to be clear that, non-renewal does not make a person a bad person. It does not make them a bad teacher. It does not make them a lot of things. It makes them, what I like to say is they're not a fit in the current environment for whatever reason that might be. I have not known of any that haven't gone on to, quite possibly other positions or roles, and I know for a fact that we have had some that have, quite possibly been non-renewed in other districts, and they have become very successful here. So, no, I don't see it as a problem, and I don't know that in working with other principals and/or superintendents, I would have ever seen it as a problem.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions, comments? Okay, anything else? No, sorry, there is one more thing. Toytown Elementary data presentation. And Ann Diaz.
Come on up.
Good evening. I'm Ann Diaz, the very proud principal of Toytown Elementary School. And tonight I bring a couple of members with me from the Toytown leadership team to share our data.
I'm Carly O'Rady. I'm the 5th grade special education teacher.
And I'm Renee Gal, 5th grade classroom teacher.
So this is an overview of our school-wide reading data. So as you can see, 11% of the students moved from underperforming to meeting expectation. And if we look at that change column, basically what this means is kids who started in the 50th percentile, we would expect them to end in the 50th percentile, making a complete year of growth. But most of our students, or as a whole, our students grew 7%. So if they started in the 50th percentile, they went to the 57th percentile, so showed more than a year's growth.
So this slide shows the grade 3 reading overview for beginning of the year to end of year. And almost 20% of the students moved up from red. And this is most likely due to a focus on foundational skills, both in the Tier 1 classroom, as well as daily intervention using systematic phonics instruction.
So again, for fourth grade, we can see, similar to third grade, 7% of our students moved out from underperforming. We did kind of discuss that for third grade, they really need that phonics instruction, whereas fourth grade, it's more a push on the comprehension, but the 7% that did make that jump, that phonics instruction really helped them.
So in grade 5, 10% moved from underperforming to either meeting or exceeding expectations.
So this is an overview of the school data for math, and 13 students moved out of the red, and additionally, 8 students are now meeting expectations building-wide.
In the third grade, 12% of students moved from underperforming to meeting or exceeding expectations.
So for fourth grade, we only had 1 student who moved out of the red, so the leadership team is going to look at this to see how we can better support this moving forward.
In fifth grade, 7% of students moved from red to yellow. There was no change in the other areas.
Oh, sorry.
No, please, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that we've done a lot of work this year with our staff and students in knowing their specific data. So we've had a lot of great conversations with students and talking about their own goal setting. And we are going to have a culminating activity tomorrow with parents that have been invited to come and join us in celebrating the individual growth of all the students this year.
The reading information is amazing. Plus 11%, that's the school-wide, moving from not meeting expectations or partially meeting expectations.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's good. That's good stuff. We may have to ask you to come back up. I'm not sure if there's any questions. There might be. Hang tight.
While we're waiting on them to come, can I just piggyback, because I got some information before I left central office tonight. Somebody might want to come back up in case they have a question. But really some great news tonight. We're at that end of year where we're starting to look at a lot of data for the year, and we typically present end of year findings at the retreat. We've been doing that for years. I know, COVID kind of threw a wrinkle in that, but our traditional method is to present the end of year data at our retreat, because we're kind of compiling all that. But I got some really great news shared with me tonight that, I had concerns, to be frank, and I think I raised them in here with our new math program, that it's a very common thing to see what we call an implementation dip. You're changing everything in front of teachers, right? It's a new program, it's a new everything, the kids are changing and so on. But the end of year data is showing from our Renaissance testing that we've been using for progress monitoring that every single grade level had a growth percentile in the 50th percentile or above. We usually target, in a turnaround district, you start targeting the 40th percentile is what you're looking at. Like, we got to get to 40, because 40 is usually an indicator that you're not going backwards, you're holding on. So to move, to say that every single grade level in this district, on average, scored in at least our Renaissance STAR testing in the 50th percentile or above is a really huge accomplishment. And I think it's really a testament to our teachers who took on a brand new program this year that was a completely different way in teaching math. If anybody's ever had to, do the new math types of things, it's not fun. As far as I'm concerned, as a parent who learned the traditional ways. So it's a testament to our teachers really, investing in the new program, if you will, and working it with integrity, and the hard work that our kids put forward as well, and how the teachers and kids work together. So really proud of the fact that every single grade level was at the 50th percentile or above in their growth from beginning of year to the end of year with our new math program. So it should be celebrated.
And so this Toy Town information is one piece of that. We've got math scores here from Star Math that shows school-wide increases of 3% to meeting expectations. This is in that same data, so
So it's the same, it's the similar data. It's the same data piece that we use, which is Renaissance. So what you're looking at there is just sort of I think, and I don't want to speak for Ms. Diaz, but, what they showed is the percentage of students that are in each of the categories. And I know that Mr. Vine has had questions about meeting expectations, exceeding expectations, and partially meeting expectations over the years. I'm not going to rehash that. But I think what they were showing tonight is the percentage of students who have moved from one category to another, which is always what you're trying to do, is continue to move them out of that red and toward the green. So they had a great year in terms of moving those kids from one category to another, which is really a testament to the system and the intervention programs that we have. What I'm referencing is when you look at our students at a grade level as a whole, we also have what's called SGP. You see this in MCAS every year. We talk about this every year. It's the student growth percentile, which is a comparison of how a student is doing to other students like them. So in this particular year, from beginning of year to the end of the year with Renaissance, every grade level on average, on whole, scored in the 50th percentile or above, which is a very promising indicator for us going forward.
questions for the staff from Toy Town or the superintendent?
Oh, all set.
All right. Thank you for the presentation. Great information.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else from the superintendent tonight?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. No, thank you.
So that brings us to, it brings us to our subcommittee reports. I do not believe we have one. Any subcommittee reports?
No.
Nope. All right, new business. We have some budget things to go over tonight. This is transfers, I believe, to clean up the end of the FY23 fiscal year, and probably turn it over to Ms. Babinski.
Correct.
Awesome. So I just want to say I've been very impressed with the staff in Winchendon. They've had to get used to a new director of finance as well as a new town accountant, restructuring of our budget, making sure that we're aligning expenses to the correct line items, and so in a school year that's going right till June 27th. So we are these numbers are certainly going to be in flux, but I can say that we have fully expended or encumbered 99% of our budget. So what we're looking at for these transfers is less than 1% of our budget. I have done some forecasting for both salaries and expenses, and it looks like, for the most part, we'll be able to move surplus salary line items to negative salary line items. So, for example, what that means is we have, high school guidance hours. There's an extra 36 cents in there, and the overall guidance salary has negative 4 cents. So there's some rounding issues that need to be cleared up because you need to have every line item at 0. Within that, we have a surplus of funds for the personnel lines. And as such, we would need to ask permission to have your support to move funds from the personnel lines to the non-personnel lines. What it looks like at this point, it will be less than $50,000. So we still have substitutes that are going to be working. We still have some custodial overtime that we are going to be seeing in. We have tutoring. We have all of these things. And so to give an exact number before our last payroll is not something that we should do. So we sort of just generally bring that up. So as you know, the school committee approves transfers between personnel and non-personnel lines. The district is looking to close out the budget, and there are some overages in personnel that we would like to have the support of the school committee to move funds from personnel line items to cover non-personnel line overages. We like to ensure that all allocated funds are spent so that the school district benefits from its funding and ultimately meets net school spending, as we are tight there as a town. This time of year, we allocate remaining funds from line items towards deferred maintenance and technology. Specifically, in this case, we do have some pending HVAC repairs and building alarm upgrades, primarily at Toy Town, that need to be taken care of. So we have sort of projects waiting in the wings, and just the decision of, do we spend that now or do we take care of that in July to make sure that we get all those things taken care of. So that's what we're looking at.
Greg?
I'm more than happy to take you at your word. But I do have to say that I would prefer to have seen some sort of written record as to what money's going where into each line item. I'm assuming that because time is tight, that we can't push this off to the next school committee meeting.
That's correct. We do have a preliminary. Unfortunately, these numbers are going to change because we're going to, again, have time slips that come in. But I'd be happy to share the preliminary. It's not going to change significantly. I'm kind of a technical person, so it will change.
So you can email that to us?
Yes, and I can give you hard copies before we leave this evening.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
great.
yeah. This does include today's posted, today posted the lump sum pays for teachers, so we were able to post those today, which is why, you know, I think we were working on this right up until about 5:43 when we came here. So it does include today's warrant and the lump sum pay, which both posted today.
Okay.
Could we have the hard copies now?
Absolutely.
Just look them over before we vote.
And I think it's important to note, we've worked really hard, and this committee has been, very interested over the past X number of years in not turning money back over to the town, if you will. And I don't mean that negatively, but our budget is ours to spend and not give back to the town. So I think we've had 2 to 3 years in a row now where we've not turned money back, and there has been a history of sending back, at a minimum, 6 figures back to the town.
Wow.
Really, this is about, a couple of things: finishing up some projects, taking advantage of getting some projects done that might need to get done, as well as expending our full budget.
Don't worry about it.
And I think, as Ms. Babinski
Thank
said,
you,
by
ma'am.
policy, we can
you
move
do
funds
me a favor and just
within
email it?
personnel or within operations, but we are not, without a vote of this committee, we are not allowed to move funds from personnel to facilities or vice versa. So as we near the end of the year, we need some of that flexibility to make sure the lines get zeroed out and prepared for end-of-year budgeting.
See, we've been talking a lot about making sure that the funding is allocated to the specific line item. For example, if a teacher were to go on a maternity leave, maybe their entire leave is not paid, maybe it is paid, but the substitute teacher was being charged to, if it was a third grade teacher, say, they would get charged to the third grade teacher salary line item, and that's not appropriate. For end-of-year reporting, we charge that to the substitute line item, and then we actually differentiate to DESE whether it's a short-term sub or a long-term sub. And so you'll see some of these line items are negative because of allocating the funds correctly to the correct lines, and that is part of why we did some of those budget changes in the spring. And I really believe that it will take a full cycle, before we really see what each line item need is for the district.
Mr. Chair?
Greg?
Yeah, if you can explain this to me a little bit. The transfer from total is $378,000, and the transfer to total is $318,000. What happens to the other 60?
So it doesn't match right now because we still have a surplus of funds. So we have projects that are sort of waiting in the wings, and as we tighten up, we're signing off on completing those projects.
Can you give us an idea of what some of those are?
Yeah, specifically, there's some building alarm upgrades that need to happen at Toy Town. We have some fire sensors for some of the fire alarms throughout the buildings that need to be replaced. We have a condenser unit at Memorial that needs a significant repair. We have a freezer at the high school that has a refrigerant line that needs repairs. So all of these things, sort of deferred maintenance things that come up that, unfortunately are thousands of dollars, not just, $100 here and there, that traditionally districts MacGyver to get through until they have the funds to do so. And so these are some things that our operations team has been working very hard, over the last few months to identify some of those higher need areas. For example, the condenser unit, I believe, has been repaired multiple years, maybe even over a decade. And so, you know, if we have the funds to repair that the right way, then we should do that. If we don't, then we sort of Band-Aid it again until the following year. So that's those projects that I'm referring to. I know that there are also a few security camera upgrades that need to happen. For whatever reason, either the camera needs to be replaced or they're not compatible with the new surveillance system. So there are some things like that as well.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm not seeing anything in here that is jumping out at me. I share Greg's sentiment. I would have loved to have been able to see this before tonight, but understand the pressure that we're under with the end of the fiscal year. So my question is not so much about these individual things, it's more about net school spending.
Yes.
I heard you say 99%. We're really, really close to net school spending, so 99% can have implications if it's not 100%. Will we be at 100%, or does 99% meet our net school spending?
Right now, I believe that we're at net school spending, but we would like to be at 100% spent. So in moving some of these funds around, we can take care of a couple of these projects, and we will be fully expended for net school spending.
Okay.
Yes.
Which is really 100.5% or something like that, right? Okay.
Correct.
105%.
It's 105% over your previous year's budget and based on what you got for Chapter 70 and whatnot. So just because we've spent 99% of our allocation does not mean that we haven't met net school spending, if that makes sense. So it's, yeah.
All right.
The biggest things within the transfers are some of the encumbrances. We have unencumbered, at this point, we do not need any more oil for the year, so we've unencumbered oil, you know, things like that. So some of those accounts are a little bit higher because we reserve funds for, you know, filling tanks and things like that. Transportation, athletic transportation, I believe is another one. You know, you don't really know necessarily what the schedule is going to be. Maybe most of your games are away games are within a certain radius. Maybe you're driving a significant distance, so those things are variable.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Chair,
Greg?
I would make a motion that we vote to approve the proposed transfers as brought forward to us tonight.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Not hearing any. We'll start at the other end. Karen?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Greg?
Aye.
Alicia?
Yay.
And the chair votes aye. And so it does pass unanimously. Thank you. All right, that brings us to the superintendent evaluation portion of our agenda.
Mr. Chair,
David?
if I may, I move that we table the superintendent's evaluation.
And I second that.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
If I could, just briefly, as you know, I have just come on the board, and this will be my first evaluation. I do have my homework here. However, I received some information that was helpful from Mr. King the past couple of days. So I printed out that information, and I don't think it's sufficient for me to give an accurate evaluation at this time. So I would ask that we table it and revive it at a future hearing.
Okay.
Aye.
Others? Oh, sorry, hold on.
Go ahead.
Sorry, hold on one second. Others?
That's fine with me.
All right. So that means that we have our next meeting on
July 13th.
July 13th. Thank you, Karen.
We are not doing it that night. That's my birthday. No.
Can,
I'm sorry, no.
except that Karen will be celebrating that evening, is there, can we maybe plan to have that done on the 13th?
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, as the maker of the motion, we can do it a couple of different ways. So if we do the table, we just leave it there until somebody revives it at one of our future meetings, or we can postpone, and that's different. Postpone would be a specific date and time. So if the committee's okay with picking a date, I would include that in the motion.
Okay. I would love to pick a date, just my preference, to have it
Likewise.
on the calendar.
Okay.
So does he have to add that to his motion?
I think technically amend your own motion.
And we're going to add a date. You want me to postpone until?
July 13th is our next meeting.
July 13th?
No, I'm not doing it on my,
Okay,
I'll
sec-
boycott.
Second to the amended motion?
Second.
Fantastic. Any other procedural things that folks want to talk about? We've got of course, we have the announcement that was out on May 18th. You all have your materials, which I'm sure most of you, all of you have completed. And you have the information from Mr. King that you can review and incorporate that however you want to. Any other procedural items relative to the superintendent's evaluation? Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion on the floor. We'll start at the other end. Alicia?
Yay.
Greg? Aye. David?
Aye.
Karen?
No.
No. Birthday related?
Yes.
And I don't know if you're serious, so I'm going to maybe write it down.
We'll say yes.
Okay. So, and the chair will vote aye. So it is unanimous. We will postpone the superintendent's evaluation until July 13th, when we have our next meeting. Okay, very good. Old business, I do not believe we have any. And future agenda items. Any future agenda? Alicia?
I do have a question. Is it appropriate to ask for, like a concrete plan of what the school has in place, maybe even a Plan A or a Plan B, considering all of the special education issues that are occurring? Specifically, like if Ms. Hero does not come back, this is how we're going to proceed, et cetera. I, much like what David mentioned, just something that we could see that's tangible and very specific and concrete, I think would be helpful.
Yeah, I think it's fair, absolutely.
Okay. Other agenda items?
I want to concur with Alicia's request. I want to request that Ryan bring cake.
Bring cake?
Yes.
Look into that.
Second?
Oh, it's a joke.
Shoot. Now we have to vote on it. All right.
No, I think I want to make sure that we set out we discuss setting out our agenda for our organizational meeting.
You mean the retreat?
Yes,
Yep. Sure.
interchangeable, yes.
Yep. Good idea.
Because we need to set that before the retreat, not at the retreat.
Yep. Others? Okay. Closing member comments, and we'll start with Alicia, please.
I hope we have birthday cake for Karen's birthday, so that meeting goes very smooth and swimmingly.
Good. Thank you.
Awesome.
Greg?
Yeah, if I could, thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could just respond to Ms. Oliveira. If I have appeared intolerant of anybody that has come in here, I sincerely apologize. That was not my intentions. As for not listening to any of the parents who have come in here, that's not true. I've listened to every one of them. But you have to remember, the parents that come in here are not the only parents that I hear from. I hear from parents out there who frankly feel intimidated coming into a room like this to express support for Ms. Hero. You can laugh if you want, but it's serious. You got to understand there are other opinions out there. People that support Mr. King, people that support Ms. Hero. And it's not always easy to balance the two. You have to make your decisions. Now, I will tell you that it's obvious that some changes have to be made as far as our special education department is concerned. I mean, I defer to Ms. Cast, who's the expert on this, and it's obvious that something has to be done to smooth things out and get things running the way they should. As far as staff decisions are concerned, since I've been doing this, whether it was Salah Zarqawi or Steve Haddad or Joan Landers or now Mr. King, I've never interfered with and tried to interfere with any of the staff decisions that they've made. and they haven't always been popular with the public. But as a school committee member, it's my staff to speak to the superintendent. I may ask why he's making a decision, but it's not my position to pressure him to do one thing or another regarding a specific staff member. And finally, again, if I could get back to listening to the parents. Several times in the past few years, parents have come in here with some pretty strong opinions. And if we had listened to the parents who came in here who were angry, this committee probably never would have voted to require masks on our children during the COVID pandemic. It wasn't always popular, but we did what we thought was right. If we had listened to the parents that came in here when Summit was first presented to us, if we had listened only to the parents that came in here, we would have jettisoned it from the get-go, and it's turned out to be a good thing. So you've got to understand that there's a balance that we have to make. And pardon my voice on my first day back from COVID isolation, but you know, if you think it's easy being in these seats, I welcome any one of you to come up and run. So thank you.
Sir?
Yeah, if I may, you know, there are a lot of good things going on in our district. We can't ignore that. I've had a great time going to all these events, not just for my own two little ones and who are in pre-K and kindergarten and now coming up junior, graduating senior. But I've been to the Special Olympics, I've been to the Fun Day, I've been to the Memorial School concert, I've been to the graduation. And those are the successful part of a school, in any school. That's what brings other kids to this district, and that's what brings teachers to this district. And I want to add one more thing. A lot of my classmates that I still am in touch with, and we all just hit the big 6-0, so we're all having big celebrations. But we all connect and we go back to our days in the Winchendon Public Schools. And it afforded us the opportunity to be where we are today. And we have doctors, we have lawyers, we have orthodontists, we have techs, engineers, you name it. There's a lot of successful graduates coming from Murdoch High School. And I just wanted to add a shout out to the most recent attorney that was admitted to the Massachusetts Bar, Attorney Timothy Enright. He's a graduate of Murdoch High School, 2014. And we're welcoming him to the LaPointe Law offices. He's going to hang out his own shingle there because he's got the wrong last name, apparently. But that just shows that, you know, that we do get it right in that area. But my focus is to get it right for all the kids and make sure that they're all successful in their own way. Whether they go on to college or whether they go on to trade, whether they go into the military. We just got to make sure that they all have, and Mr. LeBenka talked about that they were prepared for whatever path that they choose. So that's my thought for tonight.
Where do I begin? So I just wanted to say that I do think that bringing the arts back into the schools is very important, and I did hear you about music. I would like to say that if you haven't been to any of the musical productions at the high schools, we do have some great musicals at the high school. If you missed the musical production of Little Shop of Horrors, it was spectacular. Two of the stars were amazing. Camille and Ronan were the flower. But anyways, so I mean, I think we need to find a way to make sure that the arts are appreciated in the district. But I also need us to keep focusing and keep your voices alive, but I want you to know that your voices are alive at this table, and they always will be, that you are being heard, by us, and that we are trying to make sure that we do our best by the people that ask us and reach out to us, and not just here in this room, but, you know, whether it's on the street or, you know, via email or phone. I do hear from many of you, and you know, I do hear from supporters of that, and Nicole too, but I think that we need to do our best to try and rebuild our special ed department and make sure that it's done correctly, because we did have, you know, I have read that report, Ms. Oliveira, and we were in compliance, and I have to say, as somebody that's come from another district that was never in compliance, it was a beautiful thing to see. So hopefully we can get back to that. So I hope that we can do that, and I look forward to us working towards getting all of these complaints and incidents and whatever they want to call them taken care of, so that we can address everybody's needs as quickly as possible. And everybody try and stay nice and cool for the rest of the night, because this room is sweltering.
Thanks, Karen. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. Thank you also to all of the folks who have been putting on great end-of-year events. Mr. LaPointe mentioned a couple of them. Some of the things that are going on in our district are absolutely fantastic. The PTO is putting on an event at Lickety Splits in just a couple of days, or just a couple of weeks. It is June 27th at Lickety Splits in the evening. It's an end-of-year activity. Please consider attending that. Some of the other activities that have been happening in the district are absolutely fantastic, from tonight's math night that just happened to the authors night that happened a couple of nights ago. Field day, as I think Mr. LaPointe just mentioned. Great things. I want to say congratulations to the athletes that are out in, did you say Oregon? Eugene, Oregon. Awesome. Murdoch being represented on the West Coast. So congratulations to them. That's absolutely fantastic. Last thing that I will mention is that the school committee does have, or soon, will have an open seat. We are about to lose one of our members, and the seat will be coming open. It is posted, it is publicly available right now. Those that are interested must show interest to myself and or the chair of the Board of Selectmen, who is Audrey Labrie, and that interest is due by June 22nd. So if you have an interest in joining the school committee, please do consider putting your name in the ring. That final committee member will be selected, well, tentatively planned right now for June 26th. And additionally, please just watch the town calendar, because the school committee and other town committee meetings are changing relative to the summertime. So I think the calendar is updated at this moment, but please do watch that calendar, because our school committee meetings, as other committees in town, are changing. So please do pay attention to that.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Karen.
Just to piggyback off what you were saying about our school committee vacancy, for the, that will be to fulfill the rest of Ms. Jordan's seat. Just to be clear, that when you're sending that to Mr. Forsyth and Ms. Labrie, even though it goes to them, they send it to us. So you're not, it's not like when you send in a job interview letter, so you won't end up interviewing with them. It'll be, the two boards will meet and make selections, and I don't know how we go about doing that after. Yes, absolutely.
And Mr. Chair, if I could follow up on that.
Yeah.
And Mike may be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but the person that's appointed will actually, if they want to fill out the rest of her term, will have to take out papers and run for election next year in the May election. Right. It's only really till May of next year.
That's right.
Well, that's if they want to stay. They might not want to.
You're asking if someone submits for the school committee meeting, and I'm sorry to go out of order.
Yep.
You want it sent to the whole board? Or are we just sending it
No, you can send it to them.
No, she was just letting you know that it's sent, it's forwarded to us, because, exactly. So Ryan forwards it to all of us. Yep.
All right, with that, I think we are at the end, so I will
I'll make a
happily take...
motion.
Yes,
Can I make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
you can.
Second.
There you go.
Second, made, second. Those in favor, everyone say aye.
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.